What's up YouTube, Dart here from Zephyr War Games, and today we are going to ask the question, where the hell is that ban list? That's right, we have officially had 2 OCG ban lists, 2 Speed Duel ban lists, and 2 Master Duel ban lists before we've even received 1 TCG ban list since it was last announced. Now obviously, fair play, there wasn't an official date on Konami. I believe it was said around September, or we're expecting it to be around September. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the cards that we feel should change. This isn't going to be a ban list wish list, this is going to be a ban list prediction list. So let's look at the events that we've had and we've got coming up that may dictate what we've already got. So first off, we've already had YCS Niagara, we just had that. Secondly, we do have YCS Utrecht, which will be the first big European event post the basically like Euros that we had. And then like 2 weeks after that is when Darkwind Blast drops, and we also have like a Yu-Gi-Oh event, which is like a massive regional happening as well. So there's a lot of people speculating that the ban list will drop this week or maybe next week. Keeping in mind that the Crystal Beast structure deck comes out next week, and then we move into October. I would like to think that we're going to get a ban list before the YCS Utrecht, but I could be completely wrong. It would be nice to see a change in the format, even though technically with the release of Power of the Elements, it did change the format because you started to see Sword Soul drop out of the played area. You saw loads of people picking up sprites, moving on to tier elements, and they're kind of the problem decks right now. Now I know they've only dominated for the past 2 or 3 months, not even that, but they're still incredibly strong. Now, I'm not saying Konami are going to go out and actually ban hammer any of the cards, but I feel what they might do is they might bring cards back that are going to help future sales of products, and then they're going to try and slow down the engines within those decks that are a little bit more dated to it. So let's start out with sprites. Sprites are probably a little bit easier to deal with. The first kind of thing that you target will be the Frog or Toad engine in some way or another. Now, if you want to make the Toad engine unplayable, then of course you get rid of and ban Totally Awesome. If you still want it to be playable, but you want it to be less consistent and a lot harder for them to deal with, then of course you can take out Ronin Toadin. If you take out Ronin Toadin, then what it does mean is that your Swap Frog will then need to be able to be summoned off of your Gigantic, and then you need to make your Sprite Elf in order to bring back the second Frog to make your Totally Awesome. Which to me, it still makes the deck playable, but it means that they don't get as much advantage. It means that they're already having to use both Gigantic and Sprite to get to their Toad plays, and they can't even really utilize the normal summon of the Swap Frog because you need a little bit more to go with it. Other than that, there's not really a huge amount you can do with sprites that really hurt them because, in fairness, they do kind of lock themselves into Link 2s and Rank 2s. The biggest issue they have is that Totally Awesome is so broken, and the fact that you can bring it back so that you can utilize it twice in one turn is what makes it absolutely crazy. Now let's look at tier elements. Tier elements are a little bit more difficult because they utilize, and they don't really lock themselves into anything, a lot more. So they utilize the graveyard, which means stuff like Branded Fusion could be utilized. You've got different variants with the dangers. You've got curious plays. You'll also have the fairy plays that come out in November. So the deck will still have time to develop and evolve. So what do you do right here, right now? Well, the first thing you got to hit is Snow. Hitting Fairy Tail Snow, yes, it was kind of nice to have it back, but then once it started to steamroll into your elements, you're kind of like, whoa, hold up, this card's way too broken. The fact that as long as you've got enough materials in graveyard, which tier elements are going to allow you to do, is going to mean that you're always going to get a free level 4 onto the board, whether you're using it in a tier element Lunalight version, whether you're using it in a pure version. The card is just crazy good and powerful, and it definitely needs to be hit back on the ban list. The other cards that you can probably look at hitting is you could possibly take out Instant Fusion, but I've seen a lot of lists drop it, or it's a one-off that you have to open, or you're probably going to mill it. You then look at some more of the control cards that they use in their extra deck, and I feel that Curious could be one that could get hit, because what that allows the deck to do is that allows the deck to control exactly what they send, and then they have the ability to mill even more cards, and then they have that ability, should they want to go down the Griffin route, they can add back what they milled. So they could be able to search out any of their floodgates directly, stuff like the Eradicator Virus. Although it was kind of cool the way that was played with the Zeroboros, it's kind of something that you want to try and bring back a little bit. And I feel that Curious, because it instigates those mills, it instigates that direct send, that it could be one that would be on the chopping block. That I could see them doing in order to kind of change it up a little bit, rather than just going straight for it. Like, you could go to dangers and you can go ban Nessie, but then another danger just takes its place. Yes, it's not an aqua, yes, it's not as effective, but you would kind of see a little bit of shift in play that way. Then let's move down to the more generic cards. So when you look at more of the generic cards that are in the format, Mystic Mine is definitely one that does not deserve to be at 3 anymore. We have seen plenty of games in the past where Mystic Mine has won the game just by sitting on it, milling your opponent out, burning your opponent out, anything like that. Now, the argument kind of comes down to it is, do you ban mine outright, which not a lot of people will be too shocked if it was, or do you limit it to 1 and then basically say, well, Mystic Mine burn decks are a thing of the past, or it's going to become Protect the Castle, whereas you could still then use Mystic Mine as a singular one-off as a way to try and break your opponent's Omni-Negate board. Now, what I mean by that is, being able to activate Dark Ruler is cool enough as it is, but if you then don't have a follow-up to break the board itself, you're still going to lose after everything you've tried to do. So what you're ideally looking for is, you're probably then looking for a way to go activate Mystic Mine if you're naturally playing field spells, in order to kind of see out the game, to regain your resource, and then pick the board apart bit by bit. Now, if you've been on the receiving end of that, you're not going to be too happy, and you're going to be like, well, no, mine needs to be banned completely, and I wouldn't be opposed to that either. Another thing that you need to look at, and it is just a part of the game right now, is these ways of winning in time. Now, what I mean by that is, you look at the burn damage, you look at, obviously, Cowboy's been around for years and years and years. You then look at the people who are all trying to find win cons during time. So, like, Sprites are trying to use Resonator, Tier Elements were trying to use the Skull Ladybug, Punks were trying to use the Psychic Life Tracker. Now, I completely understand all of those, but maybe this needs to be looked into, because there's that very grey line of, is my opponent stalling me to then burn me in time, or is my opponent doing, like, generally get into time and just need to have a win con? Now, I suppose if every deck has a win con like that, it's fair and balanced. But then when you go to game 3, and then as soon as they get to main phase, they're like, cool, I'll take my time and I can now build my board, and then I can just cowboy the game. It does kind of make you think. Now, obviously, that's a little bit more down the time rules route rather than the ban list, but it was just something I thought I'd bring up in this entire kind of conversation as we're trying to look at what we're going to try and change about the game going forward with this possible ban list. Then you look at the other cards. Now, I like the fact that Konami always bring back this one random ban card. Like, they've done it for a while now. So you look at stuff like Regeki, Monster Reborn, they did it with Snatch Steal, and they were like, whoa, too broken, back you go. And then they also did it with, most recently, Change of Heart. So it would be nice to kind of see one of the old legacy cards. I would have liked this to have been a thing that Konami did every ban list. Now, obviously, within reason, don't bring back Pot of Greed, because we know that card's going to be broken. Don't bring back Maxi to 1, because, again, that card would then be broken. But it would be nice that they drip feed some of these old cards back when they go, all right, maybe this card isn't as broken as it once was. Let's see how it does for a format, and then go, whoa, too broken, back on the ban list. Or, okay, cool, Change of Heart, we can live with that, it works, let's go with it. So that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if Change of Heart goes back to more, but then it's like, well, if you're going to bring back Change of Heart to more, you might as well have just brought back Mind Crush to more instead. So it'll be interesting to see what shifts on the ban list on that one. Semi-limits, I think if you're going to look at semi-limits, you're probably looking at something like E-Telly. I think E-Telly at 3 is crazy good. I love it because I'm then able to use it in a Synchron version if I want to. I can use it in Punks. I think it's a really good card, and right now, because it dropped out of the Sprite kind of listings, or most of them, it's kind of fallen back into that unknown category that not a lot of people are using it, not a lot of people are abusing it. So maybe Konami might let that one slide and see how it continues to go. But the second they bring out another busted Psychic Tuner, you're kind of going to be like, maybe E-Telly needs to go. Another one that we haven't really touched on is Crystron Halifibrax. Now, I feel the issue with Crystron Halifibrax is one of them that's just way overdue a ban. But in this format, I don't feel that it's doing a huge amount. Now, I could be wrong, but you very rarely see Halifibrax in Synchrons. Sorry, not Synchrons, in Tier Elements. You did used to see it in Sprites. It depends on the build if you're going to use Sprites or not. But then it's like, well, if you're going to knock Toad, then you could probably let them keep Halifibrax. I still feel that Halley Firebrats, quite like what Vert Anaconda did, is it helped the lower level Synchro decks, it helped the lower level Fusion decks in the form of Vert Anaconda, but once the fact that it became generic, or the fact that it was usable in every single deck, is kind of where you go, whoa, okay, now we're in a little bit of trouble. So maybe it'll get hit and then all of the tuners will start coming off the list. I still don't think you could have stuff like Glart Bulb. I think you put Glart Bulb in tier elements, you're just asking for synchro trouble off the back of that as well. But it would be interesting to see. I also do feel that when you look at the list, stuff like Fusion Destiny could probably come back to free. I wouldn't be massively surprised if it did. Now that Verte's gone, it's no longer a card that you can play as your last, like you'll always get access to, and then you don't need to worry about the bricks. Yes, you will have more consistency to get it as a free of, but keep in mind that when you do draw the free of, it still needs to be the last card you play, because if it's not, you lock yourself into Dark Heroes. And really, for it coming back to free, the best thing that it does is actually help hero decks out. Yes, you could still play it, but I feel that you put it in stuff like tier elements, you're risking milling the pieces and then you're in a little bit of trouble. You could also put it in sprites as well, but then again, it's not so like you're going to lock yourself into twos before you do it, so it's not really helping the main meta decks. And it could definitely be something that I can see Konami possibly changing. Another card or like section of cards I feel Konami might change is some form of Sky Striker card, whether that be Engage, please no, whether that be multi-roll, or whether that be drones. Less so drones, because I feel that when they get linkage in November, the deck's going to pick up a bit of pace and a bit of playability, but it's definitely something that I feel Konami might do in order to help sell that set a little bit more. But then when you start drifting around that area of bringing back Engage and multi-roll, you kind of go, Colossus, Hop Horror, can we get that format back a little bit? I doubt it's going to happen, but it is something you could possibly see happening. I feel that's a way that Konami could try and justify it if they don't hit sprites and tiers. They could be like, oh, we'll leave these at full power, but we'll try and phase these decks back in to see if they stand a chance. I suppose your only issue with Harp Horror is then you start getting people playing tier element Orcus, which can get very, very dangerous. Obviously, some of the Orcus do lock them into darks, but it'd be one of them ones where you can just leave all of them in the graveyard, spin all of your tier stuff back, and once you've done all of those, you can just start going Galatea, Crescendo plays, you name it, and it starts getting very, very messy. But it'd still be interesting to see nonetheless. Everything else on the ban list, I still feel that there's a couple of cards that you could probably look at and you could probably question about, but I feel they're kind of the predominant issues that you need to look at. I feel that they could arguably start hitting some of the floodgates. I feel that stuff like Rivalry that's floated in and out of a format, Anti-Spell that's floated in and out of a format, could arguably be hit. I wouldn't be surprised if Desires went back to free, because I feel, yes, you could play Desires in tiers, I suppose, and sprites, but I feel that the only reason it got hit in the first place was because Sword Soul were abusing it in not only an attack boost way, but a way to kind of pick a board apart and draw cards. So it would be interesting to see. I don't think there's a big issue at 2, and I don't think there's a massive issue at 3, but it would be interesting to see nonetheless. It would obviously, I'm obviously going to be biased on this one, but it'd be awesome to see Mali back to 3 because heroes rule, but I highly, highly doubt that. Other than that, I feel that everything else kind of stays where it is. That's the issue is with this ban list, is they'll either future hit stuff, which is like, okay, we're going to hit stuff where tiers are going to abuse it and sprites going to abuse it, or they hit tiers, they hit sprites. But I feel the more logical one is that they might be a little bit behind on this list and they're trying to find ways to adapt it and modernize it. Because the introduction of tiers and sprites has changed the format even without a ban list. And like I said at the start of the video, people were playing Sword Soul, that's now shifted over to sprites or tiers. Flunders I don't think are as big of an issue right now, but it could be something that Konami look at and say, well, we'll get rid of the Wind Barrier statue, and you just have to play the deck out the way that it should be played, or without pretty much stunning your opponent. They could look at something like D-Shifter, but I feel D-Shifter is on the same lines of Droll, in the sense that, and a little bit worse than Droll in a sense, because you need to have no cards in the graveyard. So it's like, once you've got one copy of it, you're good. But as soon as you play that copy, unless you get rid of it from the graveyard or loop it back, like in Flunders, you're not going to be able to use another copy. So you have 2 bricks in your deck. And I feel that kind of justifies the way it works. Like, there's very few decks, apart from Flunders, that would probably drop Shifter and then win the next turn. I mean, you look at the cards, the decks that are doing it the most. Sprites were doing it as a side deck option. Exo Sisters were abusing it. Yes, Ryan, I believe it was Ryan Yu, I could be wrong, that won YCS Niagara with it. I can see how powerful it is, and yes, it is a very powerful card, but I do feel that there are ways to kind of utilize it and play around it, and it's probably more of a weakness for your opponent, like the person playing it, than it is your opponent you're using it against. For the pure fact that it's like, if you open up multiples, one of them's dead, you've opened up a brick. If you can't see the game out under the shifter turns, then it pretty much ends there. And the only turn that it kind of like, you drop a shifter and your opponent goes, yeah, okay, scoop, is if they've opened up all tier cards. They can't set and defend with tier cards, because when you look at Exo Sisters, it's not as easy to break that board apart. Yes, you need to get into Jabrain and the main one to do double damage and then push for the OTK, but you still have to deal with back rows, imperms, hand traps, if they play them, you name it. So anyway, this is just trying to keep it a condensed video and kind of go for that, just to give you my thoughts on the particular ban list, what could be coming out, what could be changing, and hopefully we will see it soon. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, the whole 9 yards. Until next time, as absolutely always, guys, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.